Hello, and welcome to Borrow My Belief, a podcast that's designed to inspire you to live from your heart, follow your dreams, and do that very thing that's calling you from within. And today I've got the lovely Kary on this podcast. This is a lady who I met at an event, and I know a little bit about her, and I'm really excited to explore more because I have no doubt that there's quite a lot going to come out in this conversation. And welcome, Kary.
Thank you so much for asking me, Joanne. It's funny because I feel like I've known you for a long time, but you're right. We're new friends, aren't we?
Here we are, and I feel like I've known you for a long time as
Yeah,
well. And just before we started recording, I said, "Oh, I don't really know that much of your story. I'm really excited
yeah,
to find out how you, well, I know where you are, I know what you kind of do, and I'm
yes.
really excited. You definitely live from your heart. There's no shadow of a doubt with that. And I'm excited to learn more about your journey. And first of all, if you just explain what it is that you do, Kary, and then we can go from there.
Often my friends say to me, "What do you do, Kary?" They're not quite sure what I do. And that's probably because I've had quite a few lives. But to me, all my lives, all my different things that I do are just different aspects of myself, and so I try, and so they flow in and out of themselves really. And so I suppose that you could say I am a storyteller and a journalist. So I create stories in different formats. I've been a journalist, I've been a music journalist, I've been a development journalist, and I also, that has merged into creating stories in real life. So taking people to places where there are stories to be heard and understood, and where they can also recreate their own or create their own, expand their own stories as well. No, this is sounding a bit left field, but I suppose it'll become more clear as we go along.
Oh my
Um, and
God.
so, and so also, so I have these kind of production technical skills, and I have this kind of presenting journalistic skills, and then I'm also Kundalini yoga teacher, and I've kind of tried to, well, I've been blending those three things together, especially in the last, let's see, 9, 10 years or so. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't expect all that. So I have met you as a Kundalini yoga teacher and been to your class, and I've also been to your gong bath, which was phenomenal. Well, two of them actually. I've
Yeah.
been really inspired by you, and now I'm really in that aspect, and now I'm really, really intrigued about your storytelling and your music and your journalism. Tell me more about this.
When I was 18, 19, I became a raver. I was right in the cusp of when the rave culture was starting. So I was going to parties and, out in the countryside and doing the whole phone box, postcards and phone box, if you know, you know, thing. And, driving cars across fields and winding down the window to hear the sound system. And I just became really fixated on music. I just loved music. So before long, I was organizing my own nights, but I was started to write about them. I started to write about music and musicians, and I ended up through a winding path. I ended up working alongside a radio production company, and now the biggest radio production company in the UK, actually. And through them, I became interested in audio production, and telling stories through the medium of audio, which is still my favorite. Nothing against video, but still my favorite because you create your own pictures, which is
Yeah.
really good for the imagination. And so I would say probably my career in journalism and audio started in the late 90s, with I'd already been writing about music and was still a raver, but in the late 90s I went to work at Radio 1, BBC Radio 1, and was there for a little bit, and then ended up in San Francisco, where I worked for a record label and a party, and I started to develop my skills as both an audio producer and a techie. Actually, I'm kind of yeah, I'm kind of a nerd as well, a techie nerd as well. I quite like that side of myself as well. So I started to develop and merge those two sides. Became a DJ then as well. And yes, so as you can see, there was already all these different interests. And I would say also towards the end of the 90s is when my interest in spirituality began as well. I wasn't very well. I think I'd partied too hard. I had my own PR, music PR company, and I was a little bit under stress. And the doctors were not giving me any answers. I mean, many people have that story. And I decided to really start listening to my own body. And I really think that that's when my journey into awareness of who I really was inside and how both my environment and what was I was taking in, eating and doing and sleeping and all that, how it was affecting me as a being. And so I would say that my journey into spirituality began then. Yeah.
Oh, oh my gosh, there's so much here. The thing that the overriding thing that I hear, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you somehow don't have any fear about throwing yourself into different things and trying out new things. Is that true? Or do you feel the fear and just do it anyway?
I was going to say exactly that. I think it's changed for me, but definitely in my 20s, I was very fearful, I'd say. I was very nervous. I was on edge a little bit, I think because I'd been partying too hard, really. And but despite that, I've always had a lot of courage. That's just something that's intrinsic to who I am, and so I've always done it anyway.
What would
It's
what
the
would you
answer.
say to anybody? Because people, the word that people use to describe me is courage, actually, and I don't feel that
Yeah.
courageous. But what would you say to anybody who feels like they need a bit of courage to do what it is that they want to do?
It's interesting. I think it depends on what age you are, how much you are willing to hear the answer. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think when you're younger, things are important that you will understand later in life don't matter that much because life is short.
yeah,
So I think as you get older, you get more of a just forget it, just I'm just going to do it because life is short and and it's here to be lived and there's this playground of stuff and why wouldn't I? So the courage comes a little easier as long as you can allow yourself not to slip into a comfort zone or not even a comfort zone, the comfort is probably the wrong word, but into a zone of believing that this is all you are,
yeah.
because as you get older, it's also easier to slip into that. So, to answer your question, I would say, I would say that the external voices are really not important. What's important is to really work on hearing who you are, what you need, what your soul was called to do, what your being is here to do, and really follow that and trust your intuition. Trust it 100%, even when you're scared. And ultimately, whatever you decide will never be wrong anyway.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm going to unpick that because I've written notes, as you've said. It's really interesting because when we connected tonight before we came on this podcast, I said to you, I'm going through a bit of a transition myself. And as soon as you said external voices are not important, that really resonated for me. Having going through a transition right now, I'm understanding there are going to be people in my life, in my current reality, who are going to want to protect me, who care about me. I've been through this before, and are not going to agree and don't agree. I've already been getting comments with the path that I'm taking. And what I've been finding, and I'm speaking this out so the viewer can understand, what I've been finding is even this far down my journey, even after following my heart and doing so many things that were unconventional, it's still kind of a little bit I'm going to be doing that and that person doesn't agree, and it's that herd mentality, isn't it? Or thinking, I think for me there was a time in my life, not so much these days, where I thought everybody else had the answers and I didn't, and there was moving into trusting myself despite what anybody else was saying or the advice they were giving me.
Yeah. I feel like that perhaps never goes away. I think it's only human to feel a sense, you know, all those things that we feel obligation, maybe even guilt, depending on our upbringing. Um, and also that can really blur your own intuition. So you start to question yourself about, am I doing the right thing? Are they right? So I don't think that ever goes away. I do think it's possible to bring in balance there. You know, if there are things that are going to hurt your beloveds and really going to hurt them, then there is a conversation to be had about where you can find the middle ground. Despite that, I also think that there is a long-term vision that your soul's contract, your soul knows,
Yeah.
you know, and over time people get used to who you are and start accepting that part of you as well. So listen to the voices, be mindful and loving,
Yeah.
but still follow your heart and your soul, I would say, is what I can't remember if there was a question around that, but I hear you. I think how you're, you know, what your struggle that you're going through is what we all go through, isn't it? It's human.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody who's listening that's, you know, in maybe in their background, maybe in their career or their upbringing or their family, it's been very logical. I was speaking to somebody recently who said everything was based on science in their family, everything was based on facts and data, and they were only just discovering intuition and they had that voice in their head going against that. And you said here about trusting your intuition. What would you say to somebody who would say to you, well, I don't really know what my intuition is. I don't really trust. And I'm guessing that your journey with spirituality and Kundalini yoga has helped with that actually.
My early guides, I've had many mentors and guides in my life. My early mentors, some of which are still my mentors, would say to me, listen to your heart. And I remember in my early 30s and 20s just going, but how do I hear my heart? I mean, I don't understand what you mean by that, you know? I think it is a process of slow process. Patience is needed. There is never an overnight answer. I mean, some people do have massive revelations and everything changes, but in general, the journey is a process, right? The process is the important part, so it takes a long time. So I know this word is perhaps overused, but setting the intention to hear your heart and hear your intuition over time, slowly, and trying it out with small things.
Yeah.
um, and
Yeah.
also trying it out with things. I think for me, one of the reasons that one of the ways I started listening, or what guided me to listen to my intuition more, is that I kept seeing repeating cycles of things that I didn't like were happening over and over again, you know, in relationships or in my mind or situations, and it kept coming back round and round again until eventually I'm thinking to myself, hang on, that's happened before. I don't like that thing that's happened. Can I listen to myself more closely and do something different now? So I think that's what started to wake me up, and to listen to my intuition and to trust myself and not the voices in my head, which is a completely different thing. The voices in your head are not who you are. That's quite an important thing that you start to learn as you go along.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and obviously the I think there's many people of the generation, you know, that are in their 20s now that are super conscious and are already doing the work. But obviously, I think things like a practice, even if it's, or it could be going to the gym every day, that is fine. It doesn't have to be sitting for hours in a cave meditating, you know?
Yeah.
Just something regular that says to yourself, I love you, I care for you, you know, I'm looking after you. That self-love aspect is really important. So that's a good place to begin. Diet, that's another place to begin, because diet again is telling yourself what you feel about yourself,
Oh, I
you
love
know.
that. I love the fact that you said set the intention to listen to your heart because my journey, I've discovered that intention is everything. It's the energy behind everything. And what I'm hearing you saying is it's finding a way to come to self-awareness. And some people struggle with meditation. I do meditate, but I remember somebody saying to me many, many years ago before I did, when I was really into swimming, well, that's meditation. The people get the wrong impression of meditation.
Yes.
And I love what you've just said as well about the food that you feed yourself is showing how much you care about yourself. And for me, that's another journey I'm on just now is listening to my body and listening to what these bodies we're not really taught in modern day society, certainly not in the Western world anyway, just how much and how these bodies are worth and how intelligent they are. We might watch commercials and want, I would look back on my own journey of triathlons and weight training. That wasn't for health. That was an addiction because I wanted my body to look great. And I ended up stopping exercise altogether because I was just so addicted. And now I'm on this new journey into my body, hence the Kundalini yoga and the different things, and giving myself clean water, feeding myself clean food. And what I'm actually discovering is my body's really intelligent. My body speaks and guides me. And
Yeah,
is that
that's a wonderful discovery.
it is? And I mean, I don't know much about Kundalini yoga yet. I've only been going for a few months, but I mean, the journey of Kundalini yoga, is that the journey of Kundalini yoga? Does that help you feel into your body?
Yes, it's said to be the yoga of awareness. So it is it is a really, really beautiful tool, a science almost, into becoming more aware of yourself and also how everything around you affects you. So um, it is a journey into the body. I would say it starts with it's a journey of consciousness. So the tools are designed to help you see what is possible, to help you realize that you yourself have what you need within you to to lead a balanced life. We say happiness is your birthright, and it's such a short little sentence, but it's so deep, really. Do we believe that we deserve to be happy?
Mm. It's about the internal state.
Yes. So
Yeah,
when you say happiness is your birthright, then you start to, even that little sentence, you start to unpack it and you start to ask the questions. And when you start to ask the questions, you start to step into awareness.
contemplation is coming to my mind, and contemplation is a journey. I think yours is the first Kundalini class I ever went to,
I'm
and
glad. What a privilege.
and I've been growing every week since.
Good.
And I feel like I'm only on the tip of the iceberg with it.
Yeah.
And I only go once a week. And I could really recommend it to anyone. There's no words to describe what happens. And I'm starting to notice more of a calmness in my system. That's the main thing that I'm noticing.
I hear a teacher in the making.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. You
I'm
never
glad you're
know.
feeling that. Yeah, I mean, it's Kundalini yoga is a real journey. It doesn't always just bring peace. It can actually bring agitation because of the amount of stuff it makes you aware of.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of change that can come from that, and upheaval. And do you choose to go with it or not? As a teacher, I've been a teacher for 13 years. I see people come and go. I see people needing to spend time integrating, and
Yeah.
I see people needing to step away. I see people coming because they really need to remember. So it's one of those yogas, I think. It's one of those practices where, yeah, sometimes you need to step away because there's a lot that comes. There's
Let's
a lot that
talk about integration actually, because if somebody's going to step onto a journey of awareness, they often come across different spiritual practices, and it might be meditation, it might be yoga, it might be very energy healing, it can be various different things. And one of the things I've become really acutely aware of I'd say in the last 6 months is that nobody talks about integration. Nobody talk. it, there's a lot of, I'll go and get this done and I'm healed, but it's never that way. It's always about the integration. And even without the spiritual practices, self-awareness, it is a contemplative journey. It is about the journey. It is integration in my mind. And to me, integration is being able to go to the depths of the uncomfortableness and all the different aspects. How would you, what would you interpret out of that?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I think integration, interestingly, is also comes later down the line. I'm speaking for myself. The understanding that that's needed comes later. It's almost that you need a bolt. You need to go into it first and get a bit of a, oh, what's this? You know, and then you start your journey. And it's not until later. And I think that was my journey as a teacher as well. I think when I first started teaching, I was very Saturnian. I was very like, keep up, keep going, you know, and I was quite tough. And I think I was actually known as being quite strong. It didn't stop people coming. Well, might have stopped some people coming, but and it was, I think, in my own process as I began to get more gentle with myself, as I began to be more tender to me, that I started to realize that other people, that everybody was going through this human experience where we needed to be kind to ourselves, you
Yeah,
know. And so my approach has really changed, and so integration is now a key part of my class, not even afterwards, but of the actual class. And so I agree with you that I would feel that there needs to be more emphasis on integration and embodiment,
yeah,
because also practices like Kundalini and other strong practices can be incredible in the moment. You know, straight afterwards, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then, of course, it fades as you know, it would do if you don't keep up regular practice. But the integration part is what actually keeps it alive within you. You know, it's what helps you understand the essence of the practice and the essence of the effect it's had on you, the awareness, not just the effect of the exercise that you've just done, but what has awakened within me, and how can I continue to vibrate that. That's the integration part. And
yeah.
so I think it's totally key, both during the class, after retreats, during retreats. You know, it's totally key to give yourself that time. And I would hope that in as we are all maturing in this, you know, wellness, if you like to call it, this healing journey that we're all, you know, involved in, that we're understanding that integration is better, and so more that it's important. So more and more teachers are bringing that in because it's super important.
And as I'm listening to you, and I could be just totally wrong, I could have got the wrong end of the stick, but when you were talking there, I could understand how your music and your storytelling and being a journalist fits in with that.
Yes, it does. And I would say storytelling is also a path to awareness. You know, I was a journalist. I was a music journalist, which is a story. Music for me is a key part in for me of awareness. It's a key part in me tuning in to universal consciousness. Just love music. Music is just my love, yeah, of my life. And so I have a few. So, but yeah, so it's a key tool to that, and storytelling as well. I was in journalism initially to tune people into this music side of things, but then in development and human rights, because I wanted to bring attention around that as well. And now I've ended up being a mythical storyteller, which in itself is a meditation. And it resonates at a primal level because these are stories that are being told from generation to generation to generation in different ways. And it's a story of the human. You know, it's the story of the human and how we've interacted with nature, and how we've interacted with entities and beings, and all through the story, the history of humanity. And so when we hear these stories, even if they're told in a slightly different way or slightly different emphasis, something resonates within us. We remember. You know, I always say the stories help you remember who we really are. And so that again is an awakening of awareness, really, and can only expand your ability to understand that we're these amazing, powerful beings in this amazing, powerful playground. and let's play. Let's really be who we are. Yeah.
Goodness gracious, Kary, I just want to know you more. You're definitely not conventional. I can say that. You definitely lead a life that you are following your own heart. I can tell that. And I know you're in Peru just now. What is your daily life like? I know you're probably going to tell me it's different every day, but just to give us an idea. What is your daily life like? What kind of life do you lead?
Um, I'll answer that question by saying that, I was telling you that I've got many strings to my bow. And up till a few years ago, I was also making websites, which is a kind of was a bread and butter thing. And suddenly the website market started to dry up quite a lot. I mean, with the incoming AI and all different reasons. And so I had to ask myself, what am I going to do now? And at first, I started rushing into looking for work, this, that, and the other, to maintain my standard of living, if you like. And then I thought, stop. What do you, when you sit at your computer and your laptop, or when you wake up in the morning, what do you gravitate towards? What is the thing you really want to do when you're sitting there? Like you've got a million jobs and you should be doing that one first, but then there's something that you want to go to first. And I asked myself that question. And so then I focused in even more into who I really am. And so my daily routine, yes, it's different every day and it depends where I am. So for the last few years, I've been traveling for between 3 to 5 months of the year. In the pandemic, I was away for 6 months of the year. And so while I'm away, it can be it's very varied. While I'm at home, I get up and make sure that I'm always at my laptop at least by 10 o'clock, which has been a habit since I started being a freelance, which by the way was forever. But these days it's more like 8 o'clock, but 10 o'clock is my deadline. And I stay at that laptop. Usually I go out and work at a cafe because I like being around people. I like the buzz and I like the music, and you never know who you might meet and what might happen. But sometimes there's days when I need to be inside and solo. And I sit there and I make calls and I do wonderful conversations like the one I'm having with you, and meet amazing people. I write lots of emails and I make lots of plans and I come up with crazy ideas. And I'm always very careful about ideas because I know once I get them, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to do that now. So, yeah, so every day is like that, really. And then also there's the hours of procrastination where I get nothing done. And who knows why? I mean, I've tried to break that down, but again, I try to be kind to myself about it. Maybe I just need to integrate.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to be lazy. Maybe there's no reason. That's just the way it is in that moment. My body needs that, or it's dark outside, or whatever it is. So there's also procrastination that happens more or less on a daily basis. Not always. If I'm really in a flow, I'll just like, oof, go through things. But procrastination comes in. I don't really have a time that my day ends, which I know is not great, and that's something I'm working on. But I try to end at around 6 or 7. But if I'm not doing anything in the evening, then I will. There's a chance I'll carry on until bedtime, which I don't advise anyone to do. But I think we probably all do things
A
like
lot
that.
of there's a lot of discipline in there. There's something that you said in amongst that, because looking at you, you are able to be in different parts of the world, which a lot of people would love. And there's something you said in there, and I asked myself something almost similar to that last year. And I'll say in a minute. And my whole life changed from that moment. And it's something that I heard online. So you said, what do you gravitate to? And you decided to focus on that. Mine was, I used to watch this guy who channels, he's called Daralanka, and he channels Bashar, which might sound strange to some people listening. And he said, follow your highest excitement every day. And once you start doing that, everything's energy. And more of that type of energy or flow and come to you. And I was going through a particularly sad time in my life, I'd say, when I heard that. And I just thought, well, you know what, that rings true. I've not got much else to lose, because in my perception at that time, I'd lost everything. But I don't see it that way now. And I started to follow my highest excitement every day. And my life has just got better and better every day in every way since. And to at the point now that even, I can have day. I woke up this morning, I felt really quite angry, but I still have emotions, still have anger arising, I still have sadness, I still have fear. But I cannot remember a day now which I didn't have fulfillment in my day, that I didn't have joy, that I didn't, which which is ironic, because what happens then is I don't want or need anything, but all this amazing experience comes to me. So every day feels like a holiday or a vacation, or just by that one thing. And it sounds very similar to the question you asked yourself.
Yeah. You definitely resonate that, by the way. You really do.
Yeah,
I really feel inspired by you, and I'm glad we've met because
yeah,
I really feel that strength and resonance of spirit and direction in you. So
me
thank
too. We've clicked, haven't we? It's like we said, it's as if we've
you.
I realized I didn't know that much about you, and I thought, God, but I know this woman. So what's next for you? What's on the horizon?
So at the moment, I am. So one of the things when I asked myself that question, because I've been running a Kundalini yoga business called the Kundalini Yoga Collective since I passed my level one, actually. So that was 13 years ago, and we started it straight away. And I've probably been seeing it as a side thing for about 10 of those years, maybe even 11. And I was probably seeing it as a service, which I continue to see it as, but just as a service, I say, but I was seeing it as something that um, was not sustainable for me. It was something that I needed to do, and I had no choice. I had to do it, but it wasn't something that was, I had to do other stuff to keep going. And so when I asked myself that question, I realized that that was what I gravitated towards. When I opened my laptop, it
Mm.
was that space. And a lot changed when I made that decision. Actually, I had a business partner, and I'm now running the company on my own. We went our separate ways, and we're still best friends. I'm so grateful for that. But it was the right time to go our separate ways. And as soon as I had that space, I just opened the space up into to fill it with all the things that I felt were connected, that many may feel like are not connected, but to me they are. They're all about consciousness. For example, because I've been doing these, I'll just rewind a little bit. I'm from Peru, and I started reconnecting with my roots in my 20s. I was away for a long time. My mum remarried, and I went to live in England and went to school in England. And it wasn't until my 20s that I sat up and thought, oh, hang on, I'm Peruvian. What's that about? And so then I began a slow journey of reconnecting with my roots, which really has manifested more deeply in the last 10 years, 15 years. And from there, I mixed the Kundalini. I thought, I want to bring people to Peru because Peru is an amazing place. And there's things that we can learn from this land and some of the indigenous people that I work with. And also, there's things we can exchange. And so I started running gatherings called Nadi gatherings. And so essentially, Kundalini is the base of them. It's the activation source is the Kundalini, and then we immerse ourselves in the nature, and we also spend a lot of time with indigenous groups. And so that has grown. So I've just come from one in Colombia. I ran a Nadi gathering in Colombia, and we walked for 3 days with the Wiwa indigenous people who are native to the north of Colombia, the Sierra Nevada. That was incredible. Just as a side note, we walked with them to make offerings to the earth and asked them lots of questions and learned a lot from them. And it was so similar, not just to Kundalini, but to all the practices. It was that same search for connection, not even search, but that the same being in connection, being in consciousness.
Mm.
being in the natural cycle of who we really are, in in harmony with the land, basically. It was just so similar, and they wear white as we do in Kundalini. So yeah, I always feel at home with them. So for me, it's continuing to be that bridge and continuing to create experiences for others to come and feel that vibration. There is a lot changing in terms of, I don't know if you know about the prophecy of the condor and the eagle.
No, tell
Know
me,
about
but
the-
first of all, before I forget,
Yeah,
make sure that we put a link to your offerings and where people can find you in the comments on
brilliant.
this video. So we'll make
Yeah,
sure that that happens because when I want to hear this prophecy, but when I'm listening to you, I'm remembering when I was very much in the corporate world and I loved my job, actually. Didn't dislike my
yeah.
job, but it was a hard grind. I was a mother, two kids. My husband worked away 50% of the time. I worked all day, evenings, everything. And I ended up on antidepressants. And I'm trying to think that when I would have been listening to this podcast from then, I would have been so intrigued. And I think it's because I'd come so far away from my natural being, from what's natural to me. There was nothing wrong with the way I was living and what I was doing, but there was nothing natural and rhythmic about it like there is in nature. No relaxation, no stop button. I used to say that I felt like I'd been put on a treadmill and nobody'd show me where the stop button was.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And I can see when you're talking, I can tell, and people might not see this so much, but I can tell that you've been in tune with nature and natural cycles. You can see that and it makes all the difference to how you feel in your body, how you operate. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned from there to here is being is so much more than doing, and all that doing doesn't get anything done really, and it's not good for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still trying to learn that. I'm a real doer. I really agree with you, but yeah, I can't help myself. I keep doing stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's the way if we've been, if we've been in this culture, I know you say you're Peruvian, but you came to the UK. If we've been in this culture, that's what we're taught, isn't it? The goals and the whatnot. But go
What
on.
comes to me to say, sorry to interrupt, what comes to me to say is that a really important aspect of my journey, which continues, is who I have surrounded myself with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I see some of my friends, my dear friends, without they don't really know, but they're being my mentors. There's friends of mine who are such good communicators that just taught me just authentic communication of the true self without fear.
Mm.
That's just was such a powerful tool that they taught me. I don't think I could be a storyteller now, stand up and tell stories if it wasn't for a couple of people in particular I'm thinking of. And just surrounding yourself with the right people for you. I don't mean that we judge them whether they're better or worse, just who is right for you is so important. And aspirational people, people that inspire you, people that give you the space to say, yes, you're great. They give you the space to believe in yourself. And
I
those people
agree.
exist. Those
I
people exist.
totally agree with that. And I also what resonate because I struggled for a little while with that. Because you see videos on social media about toxic people, and I don't believe there are toxic people. What I believe is that we go through cycles in life because we have been with those people, we've been like with those people, we've resonated with those people. But we go through cycles in life where we don't resonate anymore. And then we find a new tribe that we're aspiring to and wanting to be like. And I couldn't agree more. Every time I've had a shift in my life has been when I've connected with people or I took advice from people who I aspire to be like. And if I've not had those, there's been periods of time in my life where they've not been available to me. So what I've done is just watched their videos or done their training instead. And then somehow then the people have become available to me. That's such an important point, definitely.
It's okay to forgive yourself as well, because I think we've all been toxic people as well.
Yeah.
We all have our toxicity. We don't, you know, doing a practice or being spiritual or meditating doesn't mean that it takes away that aspect of you.
Yeah.
You have toxic moments, moments that you think, oh, I could have acted better, could have said better things,
Mhm.
or that when later you step back and go, whoa, what was I doing then? And it's okay.
It's
It's totally
absolutely
human.
okay. I became aware in the last week of a behavior of mine that I was totally unaware of. And when I examined it and I looked at it, oh my gosh, Joanne, I don't like that behavior in myself. And in the past, I would have really had to go at myself and gaslighted myself, been horrible to myself. And this time I looked at it a little bit different. It was more of, okay, that was unconscious. I didn't realize what I was doing. Now I have the choice. Now I'm conscious of it. I can choose not to behave like that anymore. And that's been a lot healthier than the way I would have behaved last time when I came aware of things. We've all got unconscious behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the punishment, self-punishment is not the answer, and it's not the lesson. It's not going
No,
to get you anywhere. Yeah.
I've been an expert of that one in the past.
We all have. I keep saying that because
Yeah.
I don't want, whoever watches this to get the impression that there's a perfect life. I'm not an influencer. I'm not trying to create any kind of facade. It's like the most important thing to me, I think, is being real,
Agree.
um,
And
with
Gabor
myself.
Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate, who I sometimes watch his things and is very high up in influential circles of thinking that he's an expert in. When you listen to him, what is so admirable about him is he's an absolute expert in trauma and childhood trauma. And when you listen to him, and if he's ever on a podcast, he'll call himself out and he'll say things that even in his audiobook, he'll say things that he did only a few weeks before that were unconscious towards his wife and things like that. And I admire that so much. I once had a mentor who came across as perfect, and I went to visit them and they didn't live what they were teaching, and it was so disappointing. And if they'd have just turned around and said, like you've just said, I'm not perfect. Whenever I've got a client, I'll say to them, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've come to a point as well that, many gurus are falling,
Mm.
and it's to do with the age that we're moving into, but also it's to do with how human consciousness has developed. Because I think in the 60s, the 70s, and even right up until recently, we put people on a pedestal and then aspired, and then they were a symbol of perfection, and they were who we could always come to because they'd always be perfect. And of course, we're learning now that the only pedestal is the one that we create for ourselves, right? And so I know my teacher said to me, my spiritual teacher said to me, I will let you down, which is the strongest teaching that he could have given me when I asked him to be my teacher. And I didn't really understand at the time. I think probably at the time I thought, no, you won't, you know, but now I get it. And yeah, it's a really powerful thing to be able to not put somebody else on a pedestal, but to still have teachers. Teachers are so important, they're so important, but ultimately you're your own guru.
Yeah. Yeah. So please tell me about the prophecy.
Oh, the prophecy, I'd already forgotten. It's saying now that the condor and the eagle, that it's a First Nations prophecy, and it's that the condor and the eagle were separated, and it represents basically the north and the north and the south, but also you can take that as being the Western world. And they were separated, and now the prophecy said that they would be coming back together, probably around the time of the Aquarian age, which is a separate prophecy, but it's also around now that the condor and the eagle would return. And so really what that means is that the wisdom of the indigenous people and the Western world that we live in would start to come together. So, and I see that quite a lot in For example, the Indigenous elders that I work with that may have lived in secret high up in the mountains or hidden in the Sierra Nevada are now coming down because they understand that prophecy and they've got their own, and they understand that it's time to teach us, but also to exchange and integrate that word again, right? To actually bring it into a modern context. And
Mm.
so the people I work with, the Indigenous wisdom holders I work with, understand that. And I also think the groups that I take out to these places also understand that it's not a case of appropriation anymore, which may have been in the past, or a case of taking some pictures with some shamans. It's a case of like, what can we do? What's there for each other? And that's created for me a really powerful experience of exchange, rather than look at them, the indigenous lot. It's like, who are we as humans, and please tell us and we can tell you. And that's where the prophecy's starting to come together, and that the condor and the eagle are returning to
I
each other again.
agree. I mean, gosh, so much. Without, with beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'll be coming one day. And the other thing is, my daughter's in Sri Lanka just now,
Yeah,
and she went to see the elders and some indigenous people, and they've been taken out of their environment, and only the men would meet with her and my grandson, and they wouldn't bring the women because they wanted to protect the women. And my daughter was really sad, and she said, "What can we do?" And they were just get the word out there because these cultures and these ways are so important. And when I say that, I think about when we were at the thing where we met was called One Land, and we did a woman's circle. And I remember doing that woman's circle, and I was one of the older people, and sharing, and it wasn't, and I cried, and it wasn't till afterwards some young people came up to me and said, "Thank you so much for sharing, thank you so much for what you said." And I felt quite surprised, and since then I've been realizing we've lost that culture of the wisdom of the elder alongside the wisdom of the younger people, because they've got wisdom as well, and bringing that all together and living as villagers and support. I mean, it's so needed.
yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree, and I love intergenerational work. Is Makes me very happy. I
Yeah.
have people coming. I don't know why, but I regularly have people coming who are celebrating their 60th birthday.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe I'll be coming
Especially
for my
women.
60th
Yeah,
then.
and I have people. Last time I had somebody who was 18, lots of people in their 20s. So the group is generally quite small, under 20 people, and it's all ages. And really, it doesn't really make a difference in a sense. Nobody's feeling like, whereas all the young people, where are all of my people, but it does make a difference in terms of the interaction and, yeah, what people learn from each other.
No, Kary, I had a vision on my 50th birthday, and I've got chills, which I call truth bumps right now. I had a vision on my 50th birthday that I would be with my family by a beach in a campfire for my 60th. And you're just making me think, my gosh, am I going to be, the beaches in Peru anyway, am I going to be taking my family over to Peru? Like my son, my daughter, my grandchildren. And is it going to be there? Who knows? It's just a vision that I've had. I'll be 56 soon. It's just a
That's a
vision
great
I've had.
vision.
6 years, a regular vision. Eh?
Yeah, it's a great vision. I love that vision.
That
Maybe so.
it keeps me going actually, because when on my 50th, was uh, well, it's hard to even believe the person I was on my 50th. I was going through a real change in life. I actually went to Venice, not Venice, Pompeii, with my ex-husband on my 50th, and we went together. We'd already split up, and I was transitioning away from a certain kind of life. And my son phoned me up and said, "How are you doing, Mum?" And I remember saying to him, "I'm doing fine, but on my 60th, this is what I'll be doing." And this vision just came to me. And we still talk about it to this day. My son will say to me, and my daughter will say to me, "I really believe your vision's going to happen, Mum," because they
Yeah,
are, just to explain, my daughter travels. She's been on this podcast. My son's not been on this podcast, but he's gone right back to the land. He lived in New Zealand for a year. He's now doing landscape gardening, and him as his girlfriend just like to get their hands in the land, and they like to go back to basics, and they like to wear pure materials like cotton and wool. And they're young people that are really going back to the roots. And I'm surrounded with more people like that these days. And I thought it was becoming more normal until they took me to their gym. And I realized it's actually still the minority. But these ways are coming through, and it's loud and clear. It's lovely.
And they are coming through, and I hear it in the language, that people use. They speak about, even just using the language of mental health is such a huge leap
Yeah.
forward that
Yeah.
people weren't using before. And I hear people talking about mindfulness and meditation and asking the questions much more than before. And I agree, I think I live in a bubble, and I don't realize I live in a bubble until I come out of that bubble.
Yeah. Same
But
here.
it's really important that we do, because
Yeah.
I'm not in this to be in a cave.
Yeah.
I'm in this to be just just to support any human that wants to try to discover who they really are, really.
Yeah.
Any human.
You know what, Kary? I knew it was going to be a great conversation. I
Me too.
ask two questions at the end of every podcast.
Yeah.
And one of the questions is, if you could go back to any time in your life and you
Mm.
could speak to a younger you, now I know you wouldn't want to change anything, but if you could speak to a younger you and you could give her some words of wisdom from now, where would you go? Which stage would you go? And what would you say to her?
Yeah. There's quite a few of them places I would go back to give myself some advice, to be honest. I've thought of this actually a few times, and there's so much that I don't want to change. I
Mm,
think probably I would go back to myself at around the age of 13,
mm,
funnily. Around the age of puberty. I think at that until then, everything was just flowing because you're a child, and and if you've got the right love around you, then things are okay. Um, but then puberty hit, and I went to boarding school, and I no longer had that safety net around me, and I lost my connection to my intuition, and I just became fearful.
mm,
And I think that um, really overshadowed a lot for a
mm,
long time.
mm.
Having said that, of course, if I hadn't had that,
Yeah,
that was my teacher.
yeah. So
So what can we do?
what
But
would
I
you
would say
say
to
to her?
myself,
Yeah.
you're beautiful. Just don't be afraid to be you. You're okay. You might be different to what is expected of you, but you're okay. And don't worry too much about whether you're doing the right thing in the eyes of others.
Mm. I think you were always destined to be individual and do things your way. Mm.
Seems that way. It seems that way.
Inspiring, because it's very inspiring because I didn't get that courage till I was 49.
It's a good
And
egg.
this next question is, if you could give just one piece of wisdom to anybody listening that you think is a gem that you could pay forward from your own experiences, what would that be?
I think we've already said it really. I think life is short.
Mm,
And to really, really examine that sentence.
mm,
Happiness is your birthright and life is short.
mm.
What are you going to do with this one wild and wonderful life, to
Wow.
misquote? Um, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. If
Really sit and ask yourself this question. What am I going I have this privilege of being alive and being a human now in these times of massive change and turbulence. That is an opportunity. What are you going to do? Ask yourself.
I've actually written that down. I'm going to
And you
contemplate.
don't have to do anything magnificent either.
Yeah.
Just what are you going to do? What calls for you? It's not famous, nothing. It's just you might just want to be a mother and have lots of children. Good, go and do it. Yeah. And you might want to drop everything you have right now and try something new. We might want to take baby steps. Just begin. Take the first. So I leave you with the words of wisdom is What would you love to do? Take the first step today.
Somebody said
Has
to
to be.
me a couple of years ago, if not now, when?
Yes, 100%. I mean, that's really, we say these things, and but when you really think about them, they hold so much wisdom.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Kary. That was really
Thank
good talking to you. I look
thank
forward to
you.
coming to Peru at some point.
Yeah, or Colombia, we had a fire by the beach in Colombia, so.
Oh, yeah, maybe Colombia.
And
Thanks.
just to say also my wisdom elders, my teachers who from Peru are coming to the UK for solstice, and they will be in the West Country. So hopefully you'll have a chance to meet them.
Oh, brilliant. What, the summer solstice?
Yes.
Yay!
They're coming
Thanks.
to England in the summer solstice, yeah, and we'll be near Stanton Drew Stones, and then we'll be at the Sacred Earth Festival as well.
Yeah. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna put a link to so people can find out what you're up to under this.
Thank you. That is just saying it to you, but yes, to everyone, but to you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for asking me.